Born in Birdhurst Road, Colliers Wood, Merton, South West 19. Can't remember Birdhurst Road because they moved to 13 University Road when I was about 18 months, 2 years old. That's the only home I can remember in Colliers Wood, which was a flat. We were the upstairs flat.
And which year were you born?
December 31.
How old were you then when war broke out? You were 8 years old.
7 years, 8, 9 months.
And do you remember that?
Yeah.
What do you remember from?
Well, it wasn't frightening. I think we thought it was more excitement, a bit of excitement that we're all going to get in a coach and go away for a time, and while the bombs were raining on London, and it was a bit of a holiday, a bit of I can remember the coach took us down to Wimbledon Station. We got on the train. And I remember putting my head out the window and my hat blew off. So it's somewhere on the line, on the way down from Wimbledon Station somewhere. But that was And then from the coach to Lurgashaw Village Hall, and we were all placed in there, and then people came and picked us out and said, right, I'll have you and you'll lodge with me, and that was it.
Were you all, what age range was there then? Do you remember?
I honestly can't remember.
So which school were you at then?
Singlegate.
And that was a junior school?
It was Singlegate Infant School, the one below by the road. We were lucky. We were picked by a gamekeeper and his wife.
When you say we, who's we?
Donald Leonard and myself. I can't remember when he went back to London, but quite a lot of them did go back fairly early, because I didn't know at the time, but since then I remember that people thought that London was going to be bombed flat and we're going to save the younger generation. In fact, the bombs didn't come very quickly, and there wasn't much bombing in London. A lot of evacuees got fed up with being there and went home. So the few of us that were left were reabsorbed into Lurgashaw School, which I enjoyed. And there was a good teacher there who I got on well with and learnt a lot from, Miss Marshall. We walked quite a long way to Lurgashaw Village Hall, and we were taught by our teachers that came down with us. I can't remember who they were, for a time, as I say, until it got so few that the few that were left were put into the village school. So I must have been 8 years old when we went to the village school. Only to start with, we were segregated. We were the evacuees in the hall, and they were the village in the there. Gamekeeper and his wife were very warm and welcoming. Their son Ted Coombs was the carter, who had 2 cart horses. There was no tractor on the farm at that time, and in this small cottage they also had a lodger. I can't remember his name, but he was very kind to us, and he taught us how to fish with a hazel made branch into a rod, with a line and a cork and a goose feather as the float. And there was a little pond at the top of the farm, which I've been back to since, which doesn't seem very big now, and they had roach and perch in there. We used to fish for them. Really, it's an adventure that you're going on, and you're in a crowd of other boys, so it didn't like one person was being sent away. It was a group of you. When you're in a group, it's like the herd instinct with cows, really. You're in a group and you don't worry too much.
Do you remember, did you just want to stay, or were your parents encouraging you to stay?
My parents said it was up to me, really. They were very good. They never owned a car, but they came down by train to Hazelmere and caught. There was a very small lorry that collected the milk churns, and they got a lift down with that and then walked to the farm. Or on one occasion, my dad push biked down on his old push bike with my mum's youngest sister, and at that time she was probably only about 19, 20. And they push biked down to see me on one Sunday.
So were you having such a good time? Did you miss being with your parents? Was that a big thing or not particularly?
I can't think that it was. It probably was the first Christmas, because the first Christmas I was looking around for something at the bottom of the bed, and there wasn't anything there. As a just I was just 8 years old then. Just my birthday was 20th of December.
So what were your parents doing while you were away?
Still working in London.
What sort of jobs were they doing?
My father was a carpenter, and that's why he wasn't called up, because him and another brother-in-law, Uncle Albert, they were in the building trade, and they got excused from going to the war because any repairs to buildings, suddenly they need people who could go and with the building firm and help repair them. And my mother was a dressmaker, and she was a very good dressmaker, and she made dresses for the younger aunties and that. They would see a dress which one film star had on, like Rita Hayworth had something on, and Auntie Doris would say, "God, glad you can make me a dress like that, can't you?" And she would somehow. She's very clever, but she never charged much for it, and probably a few shillings, and that was it. Yeah.
So when you were down there, what did you do for fun?
I can't remember much except sort of going fishing up there. And Ted Coombs, if he was taking the horses to plough, sometimes going to school, we'd ride on the horses, which we loved doing. One occasion coming home from school, the horse and a putt. A putt is a two-wheeled truck, not very big, and it's we just came across him coming out of the field, and we both said to him, "Can we have a ride on the putt home?" So don't you better today, he said, because Damsel's a bit frisky. As he shut the gate behind, it frightened the horse, took off, and he went right round the field, went back through a gateway on the way home, hit the hub of the wheel, and tipped the putt and the horse upside down. If we'd have been on there, anything could happen. And I realise, looking back now, this was probably a few months after the mayor had a foal, because he called in one breakfast and said, "Before you go to school, I've got something to show you." And he took us out and saw this newborn foal, which was wonderful to see. This was probably a few months after when the mare was probably coming into season again. That's why she was frisky and that's why she took off at the slightest thing. But Ted Coombs really said, "No, don't get up in there."
Can you remember anything of Collierswood then, apart from the house?
Only that I was surrounded with a good family. My mother's parents, sisters and that all lived nearby. They were the Greer. She was Gladys May Greer, and they lived in Denison Road. And there was a great family atmosphere with the Greers. Christmas times, birthday times. 2 or 3 of the sisters, like in a big family, fell out now and again. But my mum was the peacemaker who had to sort of get the two aunties together again if they were. No, it was good. We'd go to Wimbledon. Outings would go to Wimbledon Common and have picnics up there. Walk across the seas as well, and dam up the little streams that were there and play with it as kids. Yeah, that was very good.
Did you have any of your family or their friends injured or killed in the war, during the war? Specifically your family?
Sort of. A second uncle was in the Navy, and he was Bill Clare, and he had 2 daughters, Rose Clare and Pat Clare. They lived at Carshalton. And the last image I got of him was in his sailor's uniform, stood on the top of I think it was an air raid shelter in the garden, waving us goodbye. And we never saw him again. He was on the destroyer Harvester, which was sunk, and he was just missing, believed killed. But that auntie and her daughters were bombed in London before they went to Carshalton, and they had one of the cousin had a bit of glass in her cheek. They were great friends, but unfortunately we sort of lost touch with them because the war started September 39, and I think we evacuated Dunkirk And we came home one day, and there was a Blenheim bomber that was on its way to Dunkirk, but had some engine trouble, so they landed in the field at the back of the barn where we lived. And then they manhandled this bomber into the barn, and we had a group of airmen there repairing it, and they had plenty of food and chocolates and things, and us two boys thought it was wonderful because they allowed us to climb all over this Blenheim bomber, and yeah, it was great, and they were always friendly to us, and then one day we came home from school and it had taken off, gone. So I just wondered whatever happened to it, whether it did get shot down or whether it lasted. Mm-hmm. Apparently, when Peggy and myself went back there in 1999, I think it was, yeah, we walked to the farm, and the person who's farming it now, this particular part of the farm, has turned the barn into a house. And I think he said there were some carvings on the barn walls by the airmen that were staying there. Now this is Upper Barn Farm, further away from the village. Okay. It must be 3/4 of a mile from the village.
Did you stay? When did you come back to London?
I was there for 12 months, and after that time there weren't very many of us left at the school, and for whatever reason, I don't know, they decided that they couldn't have an evacuee any longer. I don't know what the reason was, and I was going to come back to London, but on the way back from Upper Barn Farm where we stayed, there was a pigman and his wife lived in a bungalow there, Mr. Lillywhite, and they said, "Why don't you let him stay here?" So I was there for 6 months, but that wasn't as good. Didn't think I got enough food, which I didn't, and then when I came home from school, I had the jobs of my job was, you've got a job to do, and it was cleaning the shoes, and I was 8 years old, 8.5, nearly 9 years old. I cleaned the shoe, which is fair enough, and I can smell it now. They cooked up the potato peelings for the chicken, and my job was to stir that up and just do any odd jobs around. Mrs. Lillywhite was sort of never there when I got home, and I was hungry, and I used to probably pinch things from the larder, and she made me write a letter to my mum and dad saying I'd been stealing food from the larder. And of course, mum and dad were up in arms and were down there the same day, and we moved away the same day. And I went back to, they went back to the village school to tell Miss Marshall, and she said, well, she said he's got potential. What it was, I don't know any. She said, why don't you leave him down? I'll find some way. And I said, no, I've had enough now. I went back to London. So I was 9 years old then. Yeah.
And so, can you remember going back to what it was like going back to London after that?
Yeah, I was a bit under the doctor for a time because I was tall and skinny. I hated it at the time, but I laugh about it now. All the boys call me hairpin because I was tall. I mean, now everybody's 6 foot tall. I was 6 foot tall and skinny and all that. And yeah, went back to London and then went on from there. We went to Fortescue School then because I don't know how quick we went back there. Then we were at Fortescue School till they did 11 plus, and then we went back to the senior part of Singlegate School. Well, we were lucky at Colliers Wood. There wasn't much bombing there. The nearest bomb they had was down at the paper mill factory down at on the way to Merton, and the other one was when the doodlebugs came. One doodlebug landed in the sewage farm, which is a very good place to land, I thought. It didn't do any damage at all.
That's right.
But just up in Tooting, they had a bomb when the bombs were there while I was away, and they built prefabs. I think I'm right in saying this. They built prefabs there, and then they had a doodlebug in the same area, and I think then they had a V2. But the doodlebugs, I remember watching the doodlebugs. Well, before that, I started a paper round. I forget how old I was, 10 and a half, 11, to earn a bit of money. And it was the newsagent just round the corner in the high street, Mrs. Page. And we did a newspaper round, and we treated it as a bit of excitement because you've heard these, when the aero raid warning went, my parents had given up going down into the Anderson shelter because it was cold and nothing happened. If the air raid warning went, we went round to my grand's and we got under the stairs, and supposed to save you. But in the morning we would, you'd hear these planes going overhead, and there was a mobile ACAC thing that went round the streets firing whatever they hit, I don't know. And in the morning, the roads, you'd find shrapnel, big chunks of jagged shrapnel, cones, bullets fired out of airplanes, and we'd pick these up, and us newsboys would swap it. I've got a big bit here, swap you for that one. We never kept it. I don't know why. Anyway, when you're young, you don't worry about these things somehow. Well, can't think of worrying at the time. No, I can't think that we ever did. I guess we must have done, but not really.
Did you keep in touch with the Coombs family?
No, I didn't. No, not at all, which was a shame. Yeah.
And not the Lillywhites either.
Not the Lillywhites.
So, what's your strongest memory from wartime, good or bad?
Well, good, because it set me off farming, really. I've had the greatest life I could have ever had, if anyone could have had. So really, I was, as I said on there, I was the grateful evacuee.
And that was just opening your eyes to a different way of living, was it?
Well, living in the country, way down the line when I moved to the country and eventually went to Dorset, I felt people were much friendlier than when I lived in London. I felt at home with people there. Might have been me, but that's how I felt about it, and made some great friends when we were 15 years old, and still got a lot of those friends now. Yeah, there was a scheme. If you live in London, there's a job. It's a job to get work on a farm, because there's not many farms there. But the two schoolmasters had most influence, I think I said to you earlier, was Mr. Turner and Mr. Taylor from Singlegate School. And Mr. Taylor in particular knew I wanted to go farming, and he spent his holidays down in Dorset, funnily enough. And he knew I wanted to go farming, and although he was very strict, and my first introduction to him was a clip round the ear, because he used to blow the whistle in class, and as the factory girls walked by, they'd call him Hitler, because he would say, blow his whistle and you had to stand still, and if you moved, then he blew his whistle the second time, and you got in your lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He said, class 1, 2, 3. As you walked by, and as I walked by, he clipped me round the ear and said, boy, when I blow the first whistle, you stop. So I did after that. Yeah. I mean, he'd be had up today, but he was a great master. Yeah. And later on, when I was thinking of leaving school at 14, because I could have left the year earlier. And I had a friend who, I'm not sure he was ever evacuated, but the friend was Eric Stratton. And him and I wanted to join the YMCA scheme, and it was called British Boys for British Farms. And it was like the Bevan Boys for the pits. There was shortage of labour in the pits and on farms, and the YMCA ran this scheme, and they had a hostel several hostels over the country. One was at Bristol, and I had to go to Tottenham Court Road to be interviewed to go to the YMCA scheme, accepted, and I've got a letter there from the YMCA showing me that I've been accepted and I should go to Paddington Station on whatever date it says in there, November. Eric Stratton and I were going to go the same year when I was 13 years 11 months, and he left and went, and I had an abscess under my arm. It wasn't very well at the time, and they lanced the abscess. I had 2 tubes under my arm, and because I couldn't go, wasn't fit to go, I stayed on for a couple of months. And in those days you could leave school virtually any time of the year, and because I loved cricket and football, and cricket in particular, I decided instead of going in at Easter time in 1946, I'd leave it till the cricket season was over, go in November, which I did. That's the reason for that. And yeah, but he went, and when he came back on holiday, we said, "How'd you get on?" He said, "Well, always remember him saying, I can't remember how people swear." He said, he said, when you're milking a cow and she kicks you, God, you swear like hell. He said, you know. Later on, I knew what he meant.
So maybe without that evacuation experience, you may not have realised that you were a country
I don't think
person.
I would have done. No, I wouldn't have had any idea. So, you know, that's why I'm grateful.